Well, from about the time I was 15 years old, it has been constant, one right after the other. Right now I have a great-great-granddaughter and 2 great-grandchildren. Then I have a granddaughter and another granddaughter is staying for a while. So my house is full, and so I'm not a typical 90-year-old. But I think my husband's and my marriage, we tried very, very hard with our children not to spoil them. We didn't have much money because it was right when we had our children, it was right after the war. In 1942 we were married, and 49 we had our last child. But it was tough because this little community did not have much money, but we had more fun. We just centered mostly around the church, and we had all kinds of little festivals and lunches, and we served Lions Club. And so to me, just being a good community member was one of my biggest achievements, plus a good marriage. Surprises come in different ways for people. When one of the children or grandchildren come up and say, "I love you, Grandma," that's one of the nicest things that you could ever have. Well, we were of a small community here, and our life centered mostly around the church and our women's society. We had a very active women's society here, and we supported one another because after the meeting we would sit around and talk to each other about our problems, and we have had some ministers that we could maybe confide in and talk to. Some we just didn't feel like we could, but we always knew we had a good support system. Anytime I ever had a problem, I knew there was someone in this community that I could call and say, "I need help," and they were right there. Within 2 minutes after you called them, they would be there. And my sanctuary always was the lake that I had on my farm, or the creek, because when things got bad, I would go down there and go into the woods and just sit there until I would feel better and get myself back. And you get very excited and get despondent, and then I would just sit there till I could feel myself relaxing and things were better. And then I also always had a place in my house where I could go to just sit and think. And I think it's important that you have a little place where you can go and just shut the door and say, "Just leave me alone for 15 minutes till you can get yourself back together." And it's always been the 23rd Psalm. It's always been that, the Psalm of David. It's described as though we're the sheep and God is the shepherd, and we're in God's field. We all live in God's field, but He's always there like a good shepherd, surrounding us and loving us and helping us. And regardless of what happens to us, we always know that God is there. He's our shepherd. He promises that He will watch over us as we go through life, and He also promises as we die that He will be there to lead us and help us to get through. And I've always believed that I always had this shepherd to help me get through my life and ease the path, not make it better all the time, but ease the path for me. The girls could not wear pants to school. They had to have little dresses or skirts and blouses. I guess, I don't know, they probably would have sent them home if you sent them in a little pair of pants. But I think the other thing is that because they were born after the war, and it took a long time for the economy to build back up again and for people to be able to say they had enough money to do extra things. Our children did not run like they do now. One day a week, usually on a Saturday, I would take them to a skating rink and wait on them. And that was something else. If they went someplace, I went with them. And I didn't go in and bother them. I stayed outside so they weren't embarrassed. But their daddy and I just felt like this is what we had to do. They didn't have all the opportunities. They didn't have the cell phones and things like that. So they more or less made their own fun. We did. We had a lot of fun in our house because we'd have games, and we would roast marshmallows and anything we could do to make them feel like that they had, and they had a lot of friends. We always had slumber parties, but that was the way this whole community was, because there just really wasn't money to have your children in all the sports and buying the shoes. We didn't have it, and so they didn't do it. I guess about the best advice I could give a mother would be to learn to relax. We have a tendency to want the best for our children, and I did the same thing. And when something goes wrong, then we take it right to our heart. This is my fault. This happened, or whatever the problem is, it's my fault. We start pushing our children at a very early age to get in the best school and to get into kindergarten, to do all that, where our children didn't even have a kindergarten, so we didn't do that. And I would say, really, relax with the children. Don't get so uptight if they bring a C home and they don't get an A on every subject. Relax with it. If you relax, they're going to be more receptive to what it is you want them to do. I guess I would say that 30 years from now, they're not even going to remember any of this. And if they will just take it a day at a time and do the very best that they know how to do, it's going to turn out fine. I know it because it did for me. I think a father has to be a very integral part of the family. I've known fathers who thought, well, that's the mother's job. They have that to do. In our house, my husband always put our children to bed. And that was when I cleaned up and did the ironing or whatever I had to do, because we did a lot of ironing in those days. If a father can be a good part of the family, not only bringing the money in so they can have a good life, but taking an interest in what the children do. And I think most fathers do now. Not so much when my children were little. I think more then daddy stayed with their job and did that, and it was up to mom. But I see it in my grandsons that are right on. Everything the children do, they're right there helping and taking them to this or whatever they're doing, soccer or baseball. But if they can be a forgiving dad, but be a dad who discusses things with their children, not just bark orders, but actually discuss, why do you want to do this? What's going to happen if you do it? And I think if a daddy can do that he's going to have a very nice family. Growing up, I would say to them, you're growing up to be a parent someday. It's your responsibility as you're growing to do the very best you know how, to, well, there's a lot of things. Learn to say no if you know in your heart that it's wrong. But then also learn to say yes if it's something that you really and truly want to do and you know there's not going to be any repercussions, then say yes. Be brave. Go on and try something new. I've had a good life. I really have. But I said to you before, it seems like when you get around 65 or 70, that all the problems to that point seem to start receding. From there on, it's like you're on borrowed time, and especially when all your friends are going. And here you are, every one of my girlfriends is gone. No, I don't have one. And I have my friends now, but I'm talking my intimate friends. And I think back on that, and here I'm going, and it's just like, it's like, when is the shoe going to fall? But I have been very, very lucky. I've been well. And I'm still well as far as I know. But that's about it. Yeah.